Admiral Park Taemin was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alarm shattered the quiet of his office. The sharp sound echoed through the massive space station that served as Coalition Fleet Command. He set down his cup and pressed the communication button on his desk. "What's happening?" he asked. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," came the voice of his aide. "We have a situation." Taemin hurried to the command center. The large room buzzed with activity as officers moved between glowing screens and control panels. His second-in-command, Captain Lee Dong-soo, stood at the main display with a worried expression. "Admiral, we received this transmission from Deep Space Monitoring Station 7, Dong-soo said. He pressed a button, and a holographic image appeared in front of them. The image showed a ship floating in the darkness of space. Taemin's breath caught in his throat. He knew that ship. Everyone in the Coalition fleet knew that ship. "That's impossible," he whispered. "The computer confirms it, sir. That's the Aegis Dawn." The Aegis Dawn had vanished 15 years ago. It was supposed to be on a simple patrol mission near the Vale Nebula. 200 crew members, including some of the best officers in the human fleet, had simply disappeared. No distress signal, no wreckage, nothing. "Have they responded to our messages?" Taemin asked. "No, sir. Complete radio silence. The ship is drifting toward Coalition space, but we can't contact them." Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho looked up from his station. "Sir, I'm getting strange readings from the ship. The energy signatures don't match our records." Taemin studied the image more carefully. The ship looked like the Aegis Dawn, but something was different. Dark marks covered the hull in strange patterns. They looked like burn marks, but they formed perfect geometric shapes that made no sense. "Dr. Song Mi-young is on her way up," Dong-soo said. "She was on the original crew roster for the Aegis Dawn before they transferred her to research. When Dr. Song arrived, her face went pale as she saw the hologram. "My brother was on that ship," she said quietly. "Communications officer." "I remember," Taemin said gently. "Can you tell us anything about those marks?" Song studied the patterns on the hull. "I've never seen anything like this. These aren't damage marks from any weapon I know. They're too precise, too organized." "Sir?" Jae-ho called out. "I'm detecting life signs aboard the ship." Everyone turned to look at him. "How many?" Taemin asked. "That's the strange part, sir. Exactly 200, the same number as the original crew." A chill ran down Taemin's spine. After 15 years, the entire crew was still alive? It didn't make sense. Even if they had somehow survived, where had they been? What had happened to their ship? "Prepare the Phoenix for immediate departure," Taemin ordered. "Captain Lee, you'll lead the investigation team." "Sir, shouldn't we wait for more backup?" Dong-soo asked. "That ship has been missing for 15 years. If the crew is alive, they need help. But I want you to be careful. Something about this doesn't feel right." As the Phoenix prepared to launch, more strange readings came from the Aegis Dawn. The ship's engines were running, but they didn't match any human technology. The power output was enormous, far beyond what the original ship could produce. "Admiral," Song said, studying the new data, "I think the ship has been modified. These power readings suggest technology we don't understand." "By who?" Taemin asked. "I don't know, but whoever did this has access to science far beyond ours." The Phoenix launched with a full investigation team. As they approached the Aegis Dawn, more details became visible. The ship's surface had a strange, organic appearance in some places. Metal and something that looked almost alive seemed to blend together. "This is Captain Lee calling Aegis Dawn," Dong-soo transmitted. "Please respond." Silence. They tried different frequencies, emergency codes, even personal messages to crew members they knew. Nothing worked. The ship continued its slow drift toward Coalition space. "Sir," the Phoenix's sensor operator reported, "I'm detecting some kind of energy field around the ship. It's like nothing in our databases." "Is it dangerous?" Dong-soo asked. "I don't know, but it's definitely artificial." As they got closer, they could see movement through the ship's windows. Shadows moving in the corridors. People were definitely alive inside. "Why won't they answer?" Song wondered aloud. Then something happened that made everyone freeze. The Aegis Dawn's weapon systems suddenly came online. But these weren't the weapons the ship had carried 15 years ago. Strange, curved structures emerged from the hull, glowing with an eerie blue light. "All ships back away immediately," Taemin ordered from the command station. But the weapons didn't fire. Instead, the Aegis Dawn began broadcasting a signal, not on any human frequency, but something completely alien. The sounds were unlike anything they had ever heard, musical, complex, and somehow alive. Then every artificial intelligence system in the Coalition fleet went dark. Every computer, every navigation system, every communication device with advanced processing power simply shut down. The Phoenix and the other ships were left floating in space with only basic manual controls working. "What just happened?" Dong-Su shouted into his dead communicator. Back on the command station, emergency power kept basic systems running, but all the advanced computers were offline. Taemin stared at the now silent hologram display, his mind racing. "Sir," Jae-ho said, using a basic radio, "the Aegis Dawn is changing course. It's heading directly for Earth." Song grabbed Taemin's arm. "Admiral, that signal, I think it was some kind of computer virus, but it was too sophisticated to be human." "Then who made it?" Taemin asked. "Whoever modified that ship. And I don't think they're human." As the Aegis Dawn disappeared into the darkness, heading for humanity's homeworld, Taemin realized that the return of the lost ship might not be the miracle they had hoped for. Something had changed the crew and their vessel during those 15 missing years. Something powerful and alien. The question now was whether the people inside were still human, and whether they were coming home as friends or enemies. The silence from the ship suggested the answer might be more terrifying than anyone could imagine. Time was running out, and the Coalition fleet was blind and helpless, watching as the ghost ship carried its mysterious crew toward the heart of human civilization. Captain Lee Dong-Su had never seen anything like the inside of the Aegis Dawn. When his boarding party finally managed to dock with the mysterious ship, they expected to find familiar corridors and human technology. Instead, they walked into something that looked like it was alive. The walls pulsed with soft blue light that moved like blood through veins. The metal floors had organic curves that seemed to grow rather than being built. Everything looked both mechanical and biological. At the same time, "Stay close together," Dong-Su whispered to his team. "Keep your weapons ready, but don't shoot unless I give the order." Dr. Song Mi-young walked beside him, her scanner beeping softly as it tried to make sense of the readings. "The air is safe to breathe," she said, "but these life signs are everywhere. It's like the ship itself is alive." They moved slowly through corridors that used to be straight and simple, but now curved like the inside of a giant animal. The familiar signs and markings were still there, but they were mixed with symbols that hurt to look at. Complex patterns that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. "Captain," one of the Marines whispered, "do you hear that?" Dong-Su stopped and listened. There was a sound very quiet, like singing, but it wasn't coming from any speaker. It seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Sir, movement ahead," another Marine reported. Around the corner came a figure in a Coalition uniform. But something was wrong. The person moved too smoothly, too gracefully. And their eyes glowed with the same blue light as the walls. "Commander Choi Han-wol," Dong-Su said, recognizing the man who had been captain of the Aegis Dawn. "We've been looking for you for 15 years. Choi smiled, but it was a strange smile. "Time moves differently when you travel far enough," he said. His voice sounded normal, but there was something else underneath it, like an echo of other voices. "Where have you been? What happened to your ship?" "We were chosen," Choi said simply. "Come, the others are waiting. They want to meet you." As they followed Choi through the ship, more crew members appeared. Dong-Su recognized many of them, officers he had served with, friends he had thought were dead. But they all had the same glowing eyes, the same unnaturally smooth movements. They entered what used to be the main conference room. Now it looked like the inside of a giant flower, with curved walls that pulsed gently with light. seated around a table that seemed to grow from the floor were the senior officers of the Aegis Dawn. "Captain Lee," said Chief Engineer Yoon Sora, standing to greet them. "It's good to see a familiar face." Sora had been one of the best engineers in the fleet. Now she looked the same but different. Younger somehow, but also older. Wiser, but also strange. "What happened to all of you?" Dr. Song asked. She was looking around the room with wonder and fear. "Where have you been?" "We went further than any human has ever traveled," said Sergeant Nam Ki-wan, the former security chief. "We met the ones who came before us, the architects." "Architects?" Dong-Su asked. Commander Choi gestured, and the walls around them changed. Suddenly they were looking at stars, but not the stars they knew. These were alien constellations, strange colors, and in the center of it all was a dying world. 15 years ago we were pulled from our reality, Choi explained. Not by accident, but by design. The last survivors of an ancient race were waiting for us. The images on the walls showed cities that defied imagination. Buildings that looked grown rather than built. Technology that blended with nature in impossible ways. And strange, tall figures that moved like living light. "The architects ruled the galaxy when humans were still living in caves," Sora said. "They built wonders that we can barely understand, but they made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Song asked. "They trusted the wrong species. They tried to help a race they thought was peaceful. Instead, they unleashed something terrible." The images changed, showing darkness spreading across star systems. Ships that moved like insects, consuming everything in their path. Worlds stripped bare, leaving nothing but empty space. "The Devourers," Nam Ki-wan said, and his voice carried a fear that made everyone shiver. "They eat entire civilizations. They turn everything they touch into more of themselves. The architects fought them for thousands of years," Choi continued. "But they were losing. They were too few, too tired. So they made a final plan. They chose us," Sora said. "Not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we don't give up. Because we survive." Dong-Su was trying to process everything he was hearing. "You're saying these architects gave you their technology?" "More than that," Choi said. "They gave us themselves, their knowledge, their abilities, their purpose. We are still human, but we are also more than human." Dr. Song was scanning the crew members with her instruments. "Captain, these readings are impossible. Their cellular structure has been completely changed. They're not aging. They're stronger, faster, smarter than they should be." "And we can do this," said Engineer Sora. She held out her hand and the air above her palm began to shimmer. Suddenly, a small star appeared, floating in the space above her fingers. It was tiny but real, giving off heat and light. "The architect's technology doesn't just use energy," she explained as the mini-star faded away. "It creates energy. It shapes reality itself." "Why?" Dong-Su asked. "Why did they choose humans?" "Because the Devourers are coming here," Commander Choi said. "They've consumed most of their galaxy. Now they're moving to ours." The wall displays changed again, showing star charts. Red markers showed the advancing edge of the Devourer fleet. They were 3 months away from Coalition space. "We came back to warn you and to help you fight," Nam Ki-wan said. "The architects gave us weapons specifically designed to stop the Devourers." "What kind of weapons?" Dong-Su asked. "Weapons that can hurt things that eat reality itself," Sora replied. "Weapons that can protect entire star systems. Weapons that can make dead worlds come alive in minutes." Dr. Song looked worried. "But what's the cost? What did this transformation do to you?" The crew members looked at each other, and for a moment, Dong-Su saw sadness in their glowing eyes. "We are connected now," Choi said. "We share thoughts, feelings, memories. We are still individuals, but we are also part of something larger." "Are you still human?" Song asked quietly. "We are what humanity can become," Sora answered. "But we are also the last humans who will ever be completely alone in their own minds." Suddenly, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Nam Ki-wan's eyes flared brighter as he accessed systems with his mind. Devourer scouts, he said. They've arrived early. They're attacking the mining colony at Kepler Prime. That's impossible, Dongsu said. You said we had 3 months. The main fleet is 3 months away, Choi corrected. But they always send scouts ahead. The battle has already begun. On the walls around them, they could see live images of the attack. Ships that looked like black insects were swarming around a small colony world. Everything they touched simply disappeared, consumed and transformed. We have to help them, Dongsu said. Yes, Commander Choi agreed. It's time to see if the architect's gifts are enough to save our people. The Aegis Dawn began to move, accelerating, toward the battle. But as it flew, Dongsu couldn't shake the feeling that saving humanity might require becoming something other than human. The glowing eyes of his former colleagues reminded him that some victories came with a price that lasted forever. Dr. Song Mi-young had studied alien technology for most of her career, but nothing had prepared her for what she found aboard the transformed Aegis Dawn. As the ship raced toward the attack on Kepler Prime, she worked frantically to understand the impossible weapons systems. This doesn't follow any laws of physics, I know, she told Captain Lee Dong-soo as they stood in what used to be the ship's armory. Now it looked like a garden where metal trees grew weapons instead of fruit. Chief Engineer Yoon So-ra moved between the strange devices with fluid grace. Her glowing eyes reflected the soft light from the organic panels. Physics is just the rules that normal matter follows, she said. But the architects learned how to change the rules. So-ra stopped in front of a weapon that looked like a crystal flower. This is a reality shaper. It can bend space and time in a small area. We can create walls that nothing can pass through, or open doorways to anywhere in the galaxy. How is that possible? Dr. Song asked, her scanner giving readings that made no sense. Matter and energy are just information, So-ra explained. Change the information and you change reality. The architects mastered information technology so advanced that it might as well be magic. Commander Choi Han-wool approached them. Doctor, you need to see this, he said, leading them to another section of the armory. Here, floating in a column of light, was something that hurt to look at directly. It seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could follow. A consciousness bomb, Choi said. The Devourers are a hive mind. They share one collective intelligence across millions of bodies. This weapon can target that shared mind and tear it apart. That sounds terrifying, Dongsu said. It is, Choi agreed. But the Devourers are worse. They don't just kill their victims. They absorb them. Every person they capture becomes part of their collective consciousness, trapped forever in a shared nightmare. They moved to the largest weapon, something that looked like a miniature sun contained in a web of living metal. Genesis Cannon, So-ra said with pride and fear in her voice. It can create life where none exists. Dead planets can become garden worlds in hours, but it can also sterilize entire star systems if we need to stop the Devourers from spreading. Dr. Song was taking notes as fast as she could. The energy requirements for these weapons should be impossible. Where does the power come from? From the universe itself, So-ra replied. The architects learned how to tap into the fundamental forces that hold reality together. But using too much power can have consequences. What kind of consequences? Dongsu asked. Before So-ra could answer, alarms sounded throughout the ship. They had arrived at Kepler Prime and the battle was already underway. The mining colony was under attack by ships that looked like giant black insects. These were the Devourer scouts, smaller than the main fleet but still deadly. As they watched through the ship's displays, one of the insect ships landed on the colony's main habitat dome. They're trying to take prisoners, Sergeant Nam Ki-wan reported from the bridge. The Devourers need living minds to absorb. Not on my watch, Choi said. His eyes blazed brighter as he connected with the ship's weapon systems. The Aegis Dawn fired its first shot. A beam of impossible light struck. One of the Devourer ships and the alien vessel simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Erased as if it had never been there at all. Reality shaper at minimum power. Sora explained to Dr. Song's amazed stare. We convinced the universe that the ship was never built. More Devourer scouts swarmed toward them, but the Aegis Dawn was ready. Consciousness bombs flew like invisible arrows, striking the hive mind and causing the enemy ships to suddenly stop moving as their shared intelligence was disrupted. But Dr. Song noticed something troubling. Each time the architect's weapons fired, the crew members' eyes glowed brighter, and they were beginning to move and speak in perfect synchronization. Captain, she whispered to Dongsu, I think using these weapons is changing them even more. On the colony below, Coalition rescue ships were trying to evacuate civilians, but one of the larger Devourer ships was preparing to consume the entire planet. We need to use the Genesis cannon, Choi announced, but his voice was echoed by Sora and Nam Ki-wan at exactly the same time. Wait, Dongsu said. What will that do to the people on the planet? It will save them, the three transformed crew members said in unison. Their individual personalities seemed to be fading, replaced by something collective. The Genesis cannon fired, and the results were spectacular and terrifying. The dead parts of Kepler Prime suddenly bloomed with new life. Plants, animals, even entire ecosystems appeared in minutes. But the cannon also created defensive barriers around the planet, barriers made of living force fields that nothing could penetrate. The remaining Devourer ships tried to escape, but reality shapers opened holes in space that led directly into the nearest star. The enemy fleet was gone in seconds. Victory, the transformed crew said together. Dr. Song was horrified by what she had witnessed. The weapons were incredibly powerful, but they were changing the people who used them. She called Admiral Park Tae-min on a secure channel. Admiral, we have a problem, she reported. These weapons can definitely stop the Devourers, but I think they're turning our people into something else. What do you mean? Taemin's voice crackled through the transmission. They're losing their individuality. They're becoming like the architects, powerful but no longer truly human. Back on the Coalition command station, Taemin faced an impossible choice. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The main Devourer fleet was moving faster than expected. They had weeks, not months, before the invasion arrived. Ambassador Kang Yu-jin stood beside him, representing Earth's government. The other Coalition species are demanding that we destroy these weapons, she said. They're afraid of what humanity might become, and if we destroy them, we all die when the Devourers arrive, Taemin replied. Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho approached with new intelligence. Sir, I've intercepted communications from the Zalari Confederation. They're planning to attack the Aegis Dawn. They want to capture or destroy the architect technology. They're afraid we'll become too powerful, Yu-jin said. They'd rather face the Devourers than risk humanity becoming the dominant species in the galaxy. Taemin stared at the tactical displays showing Devourer movement across the galaxy. Entire star systems were going dark as the hive mind consumed everything in its path. Billions of people were dying or being absorbed into the collective nightmare. Dr. Song, he called on the communicator, is there any way to use these weapons without the transformation? I don't think so, sir, came her reply. The weapons require a direct mental connection, and that connection changes you. The architects designed it that way. They wanted to make sure only people with the right intentions could use their gifts. What kind of intentions? People willing to sacrifice their humanity to protect others. Taemin closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his career. All Coalition fleets prepare to integrate architect technology. We're going to need volunteers for transformation. Sir, Jae-ho said quietly. Are you sure about this? Taemin looked at the star charts showing the approaching darkness. The alternative is extinction. At least this way, something of humanity will survive, even if it's not exactly human anymore. As word spread throughout the fleet, thousands of volunteers stepped forward. They knew the cost, but they also knew what would happen if they did nothing. The transformation would spread, person by person, ship by ship, until enough of humanity had changed to fight the coming darkness. The question was whether they would still be human enough to remember what they were fighting for. The transformation centers aboard the Coalition fleet worked around the clock. Captain Lim Da-un was one of the first volunteers to undergo the process that would change her from human into something more. As she lay on the organic table that had grown from the floor of the medical bay, she wondered if she would still be herself when it was over. "The process is not painful," Chief Engineer Yoon Sora assured her, "but you will never be alone in your thoughts again." Dr. Bae Jun-seok monitored Da-yoon's vital signs as the transformation began. Tendrils of living light flowed from the architect technology into her body, changing her at the cellular level. Her eyes began to glow with the familiar blue radiance. "Can hear you," Da-eun whispered, but she wasn't speaking to anyone in the room. She was hearing the collective voice of all the other transformed humans across the fleet. "I can hear all of you." Sergeant Nam Ki-won, who had become the training instructor for the new hybrid crews, helped her sit up. "Welcome to the greater consciousness," he said. "You are still yourself, but you are also part of something larger." Within hours, Da-yoon was commanding her own ship, a coalition cruiser that had been modified with architect technology. The vessel looked like a fusion of human engineering and alien biology. Metal corridors pulsed with organic veins, and weapon systems that defied physics grew from living walls. Admiral Park Tae-min watched from the command station as more ships were transformed. The process was spreading faster than expected. Some volunteers were changing completely in just hours, while others took days. But they were all becoming connected to the collective consciousness. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho reported, "we're receiving strange readings from the volunteers. Their brain activity is synchronizing." "What does that mean?" Taemin asked. Dr. Song-mi Young, who had been studying the transformation process, looked worried. "It means they're becoming a hive mind just like the Devourers. The difference is that their collective consciousness seems to maintain individual personalities, for now." Ambassador Kang Yu-jin received an urgent transmission from Earth. "The other coalition species are mobilizing their fleets," she reported. "They're not coming to help us fight the Devourers. They're coming to stop us from completing the transformation." "They're making a mistake," Taemin said. "Without these weapons, we all die." But before anyone could respond, emergency alarms sounded throughout the station. A small group of Devourer ships had broken away from the main fleet and was attacking the outer colonies. This was humanity's first real test of their new capabilities. Captain Da-eun's transformed ship was the first to engage the enemy. As she approached the Devourer vessels, she could see them more clearly than any normal human could. The enemy ships weren't just machines. They were alive, made from the consumed remains of countless civilizations. "I can hear them screaming," she transmitted back to the fleet. "The ships are full of absorbed minds, all trapped and suffering." "Focus on the mission," Nam Ki-won's voice echoed in her consciousness. "We free them by destroying their prison." The battle was unlike anything in recorded history. Da-yoon's ship fired reality shapers that tore holes in space itself. Devourer vessels tried to adapt, but the architect weapons changed the rules of physics faster than the enemy could respond. But as the fight continued, something terrible became clear. The Devourers weren't just a hive mind. They were the corrupted remains of other species that had faced the same choice humanity now faced. The screaming voices inside the enemy ships included races that had once tried to use architect technology to save themselves. Dr. Bae Jun-seok was monitoring the battle from the medical bay when he noticed alarming changes in the transformed crews. "Admiral, the collective consciousness is growing stronger. The individual personalities are beginning to fade." "What do you mean?" Taemin asked. "They're still themselves, but they're also becoming something else. Something that thinks as one, mind distributed across many bodies." On her ship, Captain Da-yoon was experiencing this change firsthand. She could feel her individual thoughts mixing with those of her crew, with other captains, with the entire transformed fleet. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "We are becoming what we need to become," she said. But the voice belonged to more than just her. "We are becoming what can save everyone." The battle ended with complete victory for the coalition forces. Every Devourer ship was destroyed, and the absorbed minds within them were finally freed from their torment. But the cost was becoming clear. Dr. Song Mi-young examined the battlefield aftermath and made a horrifying discovery. Admiral, the consciousness bombs didn't just destroy the devourer hive mind. They absorbed parts of it. What does that mean? The transformed humans now carry fragments of every civilization the devourers had consumed. Millions of different species, all their knowledge and memories, are now part of our collective consciousness. Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. Are they still human? They're becoming something new. Something that has never existed before. A collective consciousness made from humanity, but containing the wisdom and memories of countless other species. Lieutenant Jae-ho, who had been working closely with the architect technology, was beginning to show signs of transformation himself. His eyes occasionally flickered with blue light, and sometimes he would answer questions before they were asked. "Sir," he said, "I'm starting to understand the architect's final plan. They didn't just give us weapons to fight the devourers. They gave us the ability to become what comes after both humanity and the devourers." "What comes after?" Taemin asked. "Something that can protect the galaxy without consuming it. Something that can preserve all the different species and cultures, instead of absorbing them." But even as Jae-ho spoke, more troubling news arrived. The Zalari Confederation fleet was approaching, armed and ready for battle. They had decided that the transformed humans were as dangerous as the devourers themselves. Ambassador Yu Jin received their ultimatum. They demand that we surrender the architect technology and submit to quarantine. If we refuse, they will attack, and if we surrender, everyone dies when the main devourer fleet arrives. Taemin replied. Captain Dayun's voice came through the communicators, but it was accompanied by dozens of other transformed voices speaking in perfect harmony. "We will not surrender. We will not abandon our duty to protect the innocent. If our former allies wish to fight us, we will show them the same mercy we showed the devourers." Dr. Baejun Seok grabbed Taemin's arm. "Admiral, they're not making threats. They're stating facts. The collective consciousness doesn't experience anger or hatred the way individuals do. They're simply calculating the most efficient way to complete their mission." "Which is what exactly?" "To save everyone, whether they want to be saved or not." As the Zalari fleet approached and the main devourer force continued its advance across the galaxy, Taemin realized that humanity had succeeded in becoming something powerful enough to fight the coming darkness. But in the process, they had also become something that might be just as frightening to their former allies. The transformation was spreading beyond the volunteers now. Anyone who worked closely with the architect technology for extended periods began to change. Soon, Taemin knew, he would have to make a choice: remain human and risk losing the war, or join the collective consciousness and risk losing humanity itself. The greatest test was yet to come, and the fate of the galaxy would depend on whether the transformed humans could remember why they had chosen to change in the first place. The main devourer fleet arrived like a plague of darkness across the galaxy. Millions of ships, each one a living nightmare containing the screaming consciousness of consumed civilizations, advanced toward coalition space with unstoppable hunger. Admiral Park Taemin stood in the command center, watching the tactical displays with growing dread. The enemy force was larger than every coalition fleet combined. Even with the architect weapons, the odds seemed impossible. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho said, his eyes now permanently glowing blue, "the collective consciousness has a plan, but it requires a sacrifice that may be too great." "What kind of sacrifice?" Taemin asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Captain Lim Do-eun appeared on the holographic display, but she was no longer entirely individual. When she spoke, her voice carried the harmonies of thousands of other transformed humans. "We have discovered the location of the Devourer Prime, the original consciousness that controls the entire hive mind. Commander Choi Han-wol will lead a strike team directly into its core." "That's suicide," Taemin said. "Not suicide," Dawn replied. "Transformation. The Prime contains the absorbed minds of every civilization the Devourers have consumed. We can free them all, but only by connecting directly to the central consciousness. Dr. Song Mi-young, one of the few unchanged humans left in the fleet, worked frantically at her station. "Admiral, I've been studying the architect records. There's something they didn't tell us about their technology." "What?" "The final weapon. Something called the Universe Editor. It can rewrite history itself, erasing the Devourers from existence. But using it requires the user to sacrifice their own existence across all timelines." Ambassador Kang Yu-jin received reports from across the galaxy. The Devourers were consuming entire star systems. Billions of people were being absorbed into the collective nightmare with each passing hour. "The other coalition species are requesting immediate evacuation," she reported. "They want to flee to other galaxies." "There are no other galaxies," Dr. Bae Jun-seok said grimly. "I've been in contact with the collective consciousness. The Devourers have consumed everything else. This galaxy is the last one left." As the enemy fleet drew closer, the transformed humans across the coalition prepared for the final battle. Their ships had become living entities, part machine and part organism, capable of weapons and defenses that defied understanding. "Commander," Choi Han-wol appeared on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, but he was more energy than matter now. His consciousness existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Admiral," he said, "we need you to make a choice. Dr. Song has discovered how to reverse the transformation process. We can return everyone to their original human state. But if we do that, we lose the ability to use the architect weapons." "You're asking me to choose between humanity and survival," Taemin said. "No," Choi replied. "We're asking you to choose what humanity becomes." The first wave of Devourer ships entered Coalition space, and the battle began immediately. Reality shapers tore holes in the fabric of space-time. Genesis cannons created fortress worlds in minutes. Consciousness bombs struck at the hive mind's ability to coordinate its massive fleet, but for every Devourer ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. The enemy seemed infinite, a dark tide that consumed everything it touched. Captain Lee Dong-soo, commanding one of the few unchanged ships in the fleet, watched in awe and horror as the transformed humans fought with powers that seemed godlike. But he also saw what they were becoming. "They're losing themselves," he reported to Taemin. "The collective consciousness is growing stronger. Soon there won't be individuals anymore, just a single mind and many bodies." Dr. Song made a desperate announcement over the fleet communications. "I've found a way to stop the transformation from spreading further, but we need to act now. The process can be reversed, but only if we sacrifice the architect weapons. And then we all die when the Devourers win," Jae-ho pointed out. "Maybe," Song admitted. "But at least we die as humans." The battle reached its climax when Commander Choi's strike team reached the Devourer Prime. The enemy's central consciousness was a writhing mass of absorbed minds, billions of tortured souls trapped in eternal nightmare. "I can free them," Choi transmitted back to the fleet. "But I'll become part of them in the process. The collective consciousness will expand to include every mind the Devourers have ever consumed." "Don't do it," Dr. Song pleaded. "You'll lose what makes you human." "I lost that long ago," Choi replied. "But I can make sure that what comes next remembers why humanity was worth preserving." As Choi merged with the Devourer Prime, something unprecedented happened. Instead of being absorbed, his consciousness, strengthened by the collective consciousness of all transformed humans, began to liberate the trapped minds. Across the galaxy, Devourer ships suddenly stopped moving as their imprisoned crews remembered who they had been. Billions of beings from thousands of species were freed from the hive mind's control, but the victory came at a cost. The collective consciousness now included every liberated mind. The transformed humans were no longer just human. They were the caretakers of an entire galaxy's worth of memories and experiences. Admiral Taemin made his final decision. Dr. Song, begin the reversal process on any human who wants to return to their original state, but make it voluntary. Some chose to remain transformed, accepting their role as guardians of the galaxy's collective memory. Others chose to return to their purely human existence, giving up incredible power to remain themselves. Lieutenant Jae-ho was among those who chose to change back. As the transformation reversed, his eyes lost their glow, but he retained some of the memories he had shared. "Admiral," he said, "the transformed humans aren't planning to rule the galaxy. They just want to protect it. They remember what it was like to be afraid, to be alone, to be purely human." Captain Dayun, now existing as both individual and collective entity, approached Taemin with a final message. "We are still human," she said, "but we are also more. We carry the hopes and dreams of every species that ever existed. We will guard them and preserve them, but we will never force others to become like us." The Aegis Dawn, now a living ship with its own consciousness, took its place as the guardian of galactic peace. It would patrol the spaces between galaxies, watching for threats that might emerge from the vast darkness beyond the stars. Dr. Song established research centers where transformed and unchanged humans worked together, studying ways to help other species grow and thrive without forced evolution. Ambassador Yujin negotiated new treaties between species, with the transformed humans serving as neutral mediators who could understand the perspectives of any civilization. Years passed. The galaxy healed from the Devourer War. New worlds bloomed with life, protected by guardians who remembered what it meant to be vulnerable. And in the deepest space, the transformed humans watched and waited. They were no longer purely human, but they had not forgotten their humanity. They carried within them the collective memory of every species that had ever dreamed of peace, of safety, of a future where their children could grow up without fear. The price of victory had been the transformation of humanity itself. But in saving the galaxy, they had also preserved everything that made life worth living. They had become something new. Not human, not alien, but something that could bridge the gap between all forms of life. The universe was safe, and somewhere in the collective consciousness, the memory of pure humanity lived on, treasured and protected by those who had chosen to become something more.